Listen closely, because if you miss the next few seconds, you'll miss the one truth that instantly shifts how women see you. A woman never fears losing a man she knows too well, only the man she realizes she never fully had. And the moment she feels that, everything about the way she treats you changes. Most men think women fall in love because of comfort, attention, or reassurance. But that's not what pulls her deeper. That's what makes her relax. And relaxed women do not chase. Relaxed women do not invest. Relaxed women do not worry about losing you. What triggers her fear of losing you is something far more primal, far more psychological, and far more connected to the way your presence makes her question herself. Not question you, question herself. That is where the real power lies. A woman begins to fear losing you the moment she senses that your life continues with or without her. Not in a petty, manipulative way, but in a grounded, masculine, unshakable way. When she feels that you are a man with direction, discipline, and emotional center, she realizes something rare. You are not depending on her for identity. And that realization wakes up a deep survival instinct in her brain, the part linked to attachment, value, and security. It whispers to her, if you don't show up for this man, another woman will. Women never say this out loud, but every woman has a silent fear, losing a man she respects, not likes, not loves, respects. Because respect is the gateway to attraction, desire, loyalty, and long-term emotional investment. The moment she respects you, she becomes careful with how she speaks to you. She becomes attentive to your needs. She becomes mindful of your time. And the moment she feels that respect slipping, she fears another woman will see what she sees in you and take the place she wants to keep. But this is where most men sabotage themselves. They think that if they give more, explain more, chase more, or prove more, she will value them more. But in female psychology, the opposite is true. When you overgive, she stops valuing. When you over-explain, she stops listening. When you chase, she stops moving. And when you prove yourself to her, she stops believing she could ever lose you, because you've already shown her that you're afraid of losing her. A woman does not fear losing a man who fears losing her. She only fears losing the man who could walk away and still be whole. And if that sentence stings, it's because on some level, you already know it's true. You've seen it. The guys she ignores, ghosts, or strings along are always the ones who try the hardest to convince her they're worth choosing. And the men she obsesses over, cries over, argues with herself about, and can't get out of her mind for days, are the ones who live their lives with or without her approval. Not cruelly, not arrogantly, but confidently, with self-respect, with emotional boundaries, with standards. Women are far more perceptive than men realize. A woman can feel your insecurity without you saying a single word. She can sense your emotional dependence through the tone of your voice. She can detect your fear of losing her through the way you text, the speed at which you respond, or how quickly you abandon your plans the moment she calls. But she can also sense something else, a man who has options, a man who has purpose, a man who is not emotionally starving. That man triggers her fear of losing him before he even knows he's doing it. Because in her mind, a man like that is rare. A man like that is valuable. A man like that does not come around twice, and deep down, she knows it. You want to know the moment a woman truly begins to fear losing you? It's not when you pull away. It's not when you ignore her. It's not when you play games. It happens when she realizes, maybe for the first time in her life, that your attention is not automatic, that your energy is not guaranteed, that your presence in her world is something she has to earn, not something she can assume. And this realization hits her quietly, like a subtle shift in the air she can't explain but deeply feels. A woman's mind is always scanning for emotional safety. But emotional safety doesn't come from a man who gives himself away too easily. It comes from a man who values himself so much that he moves with intention. A man who doesn't offer his heart to anyone who smiles at him. A man who has standards, preferences, boundaries, and a life so full that she must bring real value to be part of it. When she meets that kind of man, something profound activates inside her. She becomes alert. She becomes invested. She starts paying attention because deep down she knows she could lose him if she doesn't show up as her best. Most men never experience this shift because they never let a woman feel it. They cling too fast. They overshare too soon. They reveal their entire emotional world before she's earned the right to see it. And when you give a woman the reward before the effort, she stops trying. She stops wondering about you. She stops worrying about losing you, because from her perspective, she already has you. Not through effort, but by default. And nothing that comes with zero effort ever feels valuable. But here's the truth most men never hear. When a woman feels she has you too easily, she stops respecting you quietly. Not because she wants to disrespect you, but because biology drives her toward strength, direction, and challenge. A woman's attraction grows from how you carry yourself, not how much you give her. So when she sees you rearranging your entire world for her, dropping everything just because she asked, canceling your plans, ignoring your goals, or suppressing your emotions to keep her comfortable, she loses the very thing she was attracted to in the first place, your masculine center. But when you remain steady, when you choose yourself first, when you invest in your purpose before you invest in her emotions, she notices. She may never admit it, but she admires it. She leans into it. She respects it. And that respect slowly transforms into something else. Fear. Not fear of you. Fear of losing you. Fear of losing a man she cannot easily replace. Women don't fear losing men who collapse the moment they receive affection. They fear losing men who remain grounded, composed, and emotionally stable even in the presence of beauty, desire, or love. A woman is drawn to a man who can feel deeply but stay centered. A man who can care without becoming dependent. A man who can love without losing himself. Because women don't fall for men who need them. They fall for men they can grow with. Men who challenge them to rise, men who live with intention, purpose, and emotional discipline, men who don't abandon their own identity to merge with hers. And that's the paradox most men never understand. The more independent you are, the more emotionally invested she becomes. The more secure you are within yourself, the more she fears losing you. The more you honor your path, the more she imagines her future with you. When a woman senses that you are a man who could walk away not out of anger, but out of self-respect, that is the moment she becomes careful. That is the moment she starts trying harder. That is the moment she quietly asks herself, does he still choose me, or have I taken him for granted? And that question changes everything. There's a shift that happens inside a woman when she realizes she is not the center of your emotional universe. At first, it confuses her. Then it intrigues her, and eventually, it awakens something she rarely experiences with modern men: accountability. Suddenly, she starts paying attention to how she shows up. She notices the tone she uses with you. She becomes aware of the effort you put in. She starts observing whether she's matching that effort. And when she sees that she's not, a quiet fear begins to rise inside her. Not fear of abandonment, fear of missing out on a man who elevates her simply by being himself. Women don't fear losing men who are always available. They fear losing men who are available with intention. Any man can reply instantly. Any man can chase endlessly. Any man can make her his entire identity. But a man who responds with purpose, who gives his time deliberately, who chooses her without worshiping her, that man stands out. That man is remembered. That man creates emotional gravity, and gravity makes her orbit around you without you ever needing to pull her in. What most men don't realize is that women test you long before they trust you. Not because they're manipulative, but because they're wired to assess your emotional strength. She wants to know if you crumble when she pulls back. She wants to know if you panic when she becomes distant. She wants to see whether your world collapses when she withdraws her attention just a little. Because those reactions reveal everything she needs to know about your internal stability. And the man who fails these tests is not the man she fears losing. He is the man she uses for validation until someone stronger appears. But the man who passes, the man who remains calm, steady, composed, he captivates her. He unsettles her. He makes her rethink every assumption she had about you. Because a man like that is dangerous in the best possible way. He can love her fully, but he can also walk away with dignity. And that duality is what drives her deepest attraction. Women rarely admit this out loud, but they're far more invested in men who don't collapse under emotional pressure. When she sees you stay grounded even when she's unpredictable, she feels safe. When she sees you maintain your standards even when she's emotional, she feels respect. When she sees you remain consistent even when she pulls back, she feels desire. And those three things, safety, respect, and desire, are the foundations of her fear of losing you. Because once a woman feels them, she can't feel indifferent anymore. She becomes aware of your presence in her life. She notices how different she feels with you compared to other men. She recognizes the contrast between your strength and their insecurity, and that contrast makes her protective of the connection. But here's the secret most men never hear. Women don't fall in love with you because you're perfect. They fall in love because you're irreplaceable. And a man becomes irreplaceable not by giving everything, but by holding something back. His self-respect, his boundaries, his mission, his emotional center. These things create a psychological distance, not the kind that pushes her away, but the kind that pulls her in because she senses depth she hasn't touched yet. A woman fears losing the man she hasn't fully figured out, the man she can't predict, the man whose attention she feels but doesn't control, the man whose validation she values because it is earned, not handed out. And when a woman meets that man, she changes. She becomes more intentional, more expressive, more consistent, not because you forced anything, but because she knows the truth most men never understand. A man with self-respect can leave at any time, and that possibility scares her in a way that makes her show up with more honesty, effort, and desire than she ever has before. There's a moment in every connection where the balance quietly shifts, and the woman realizes she is no longer evaluating you. She is being evaluated by you. And that moment impacts her more than she'll ever let you know. Because women aren't used to being assessed. They're used to being pursued, praised, admired, and chased. So when she senses that you are a man who observes before committing, a man who chooses slowly but intentionally, a man who does not hand out emotional investment like candy, something inside her tightens. It's not anxiety, it's awareness. Awareness that she could lose you if she doesn't measure up. A woman begins to fear losing you when she sees that your standards are real, not performative. When she notices you don't tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional laziness. When she senses that you will remove yourself from chaos rather than engage in it. Men think women want endless softness, endless validation, endless accommodation. But what truly awakens her feminine energy is the presence of a man who provides emotional structure, not control, not dominance, structure, a sense of, this is who I am and this is how I move. That clarity makes her feel both safe and challenged. Safe because she can trust your direction, challenged because she now has something to rise to. You want to know why women try harder for some men than others? Because some men require it. Not through threats, not through games, through standards, through emotional maturity, through the simple truth that they will not settle for a woman who only shows up halfway. When a woman meets a man who values his time, protects his peace, and doesn't crumble under pressure, she starts calibrating her behavior. She becomes more intentional with her affection, more consistent with her communication, more thoughtful with her presence. Not because she's scared of punishment, but because she wants to be worthy of the space she gets to occupy in his life. And that's the part most men overlook. Women are not motivated by your fear of losing them. They're motivated by the possibility that you won't stay if they don't show up right. A man who needs her will always lose her respect. A man who chooses her from strength ignites her devotion. This is why your emotional discipline matters more than your looks, your money, or your charm. Those things may attract her, but your discipline determines whether she fears losing you. Think about this carefully. When a woman sees you stick to your word, she evaluates her own. When she watches you control your impulses, she checks her own emotional reactions. When she sees you communicate calmly, she reflects on how she speaks to you. Your behavior becomes a mirror that reveals who she is becoming around you. And if she likes the version of herself that appears in that mirror, she will fight to keep you. If she sees growth, softness, trust, and effort, she will invest even more. Because you aren't just a man to her at that point. You are a standard. You are a stabilizing force. You are a rare combination of emotional strength and masculine grace. But here is where the fear truly begins. She realizes you don't just elevate her, you could outgrow her. And that thought terrifies her in a way she can't explain. Because women know that a man on a path, a man with direction, a man who is becoming better every month, every year, every season, is a man other women will eventually notice. Not because he's trying to be seen, but because growth is attractive, discipline is attractive, self-respect is attractive. And a woman who sees that in you becomes protective of the connection, even territorial in subtle ways, because she knows what she has, but she also knows what she could lose. And once that fear awakens, she stops taking you for granted. She starts fighting for you. She starts choosing you with more intention, not because she's desperate, but because you've become the kind of man she doesn't want to watch walk away. There is a point in every man's life when he finally understands that the fear of losing him is not created by force, manipulation, or emotional withdrawal. It's created by who he becomes, and that realization changes everything. Because once you know that women respond to your energy more than your effort, you stop chasing validation and start cultivating presence. You stop trying to impress her and start focusing on becoming a man who impresses himself. Women feel this shift instantly. They feel it in your silence. They feel it in your confidence. They feel it in the way you walk into a room no longer trying to be chosen, but observing who deserves access to you. A woman fears losing a man who knows his value. Not the man who shouts about it, but the man who moves like it. The man who doesn't compete with other men because he is competing with his former self. The man who doesn't argue to prove he's right because his truth isn't fragile. The man who doesn't cling because he trusts himself enough to let life unfold. When she senses this depth in you, she begins to experience something rare. A man she cannot influence with mind games, pressure, or emotional volatility. A man whose emotional world does not rise and fall based on her mood. And that stability is what makes her imagine a future with you, but also fear losing you. Because here's the truth she won't say out loud. The more she respects you, the more she becomes accountable to the relationship. She starts checking herself. She pays attention to the way she speaks to you. She becomes more intentional with her affection. She becomes more self-aware of her reactions. She knows that if she pushes too far, you will walk, not out of anger, but out of alignment. She knows that your peace is more valuable to you than her drama. She knows that you will choose a quiet life over a chaotic relationship, and it humbles her in the most unexpected way. She starts admiring the way you protect your time, the way you prioritize your goals, the way you stay consistent even when she tries to pull you off your path. This is the moment she realizes something life-changing. She is not the center of your universe, but she wants to earn a place in it. This is when her effort increases. This is when she initiates more. This is when she becomes more expressive, more present, more invested. Because she sees the type of man she could lose. And losing a man of substance feels very different from losing a man of insecurity. What she fears most is not that you'll meet someone else. What she fears is that you will outgrow her, that your discipline, ambition, or growth will elevate you into a version of yourself that requires a higher level of woman, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Women understand this on an intuitive level. They know that a man who is constantly improving becomes harder to replace. They know that a man who is emotionally stable becomes harder to manipulate. They know that a man who is self-sufficient becomes harder to control. And that's when she starts cherishing the connection with a depth she didn't show before. Because deep down, she knows that if she doesn't give her best, you will not settle for her half-hearted presence. You will not sacrifice your peace to keep someone who doesn't match your effort. You will not shrink yourself to fit a relationship lacking depth. You will walk with dignity, and dignity is something every woman respects, even if it scares her. So remember this. You do not trigger her fear of losing you by being colder. You trigger it by being stronger, by being more centered, by being a man who chooses himself before he chooses temporary comfort. A man who loves without losing himself, gives without overextending, and stays without needing her to complete him. That is the man she fears losing, and that is the man you are becoming.